Today on Road Testament, I sit in for Mike Spinelli and we recap the biggest reveal from this year's Detroit Auto Show, the C7 Corvette Stingray. After spending 2 days on the ground in Detroit, there was a certain vibe in the air. The only thing people cared about was the new Corvette, or at least that's what it seemed like. Very rarely do you see new car reveals end up on the front page of newspapers across the country. The Corvette is the exception. Even websites like CNN.com, MSNBC.com ran front page stories. The C7 seemed to have captured the attention of the masses across the US. Or rather, Chevy dropped a pretty penny with their PR agencies. The Stingray is a visual leap forward compared to the past generation. At the roots, though, the chassis is relatively the same as the C6. Now, I must say, that is not a jab at GM engineers. From what we've seen, what we've been told, and what you're about to hear, the car has been radically re-engineered. Edmunds.com recently ran a story about the suspension setup of the new Dodge Viper. I rarely suggest you go to competing websites, but Dan did a great job with this article. In it, you realize that from the forefront, the Viper has had very few major engineering changes since the past generation. But it's all in the fine details. When it all came together, it made for a great package. I think the same can be said about this new Corvette. Visually, it's vastly different. I, for one, love the front three quarters of the car, but the rear, too Camaro-ish for me, too busy. Maybe it'll grow on me, maybe not. I feel like the C7 is a moment in time, 2012. The C6 was simple, it was clean, it was fresh. Something that could actually last for another 5 years and still feel modern. But back to the engineering. It seems that GM engineers have gone to great lengths to change all the small things. Given from what we've seen, cars like the Viper, even more importantly, things like the 911, sometimes it has nothing to do with the big changes. It all comes down to the small changes, the small improvements. We had the opportunity to sit down with Chevy's chief engineer to ask what makes the C7 so different.
Our goals this time were the same as whenever we do a new Corvette. We try to take things that we perceive as weaknesses about the vehicle, which is input we get from customers, input we get from media. Many of us are customers, we drive the cars all the time, we know what its strengths and weaknesses are, so we try to take the weaknesses of the car and turn them into strengths. And we try to take the things that are really good about the car and make them even better. So what's really good about the Corvette? What's good about it is it does a lot of things well. Today's car is a great daily driver, it's comfortable for people of a lot of different sizes, it's got all the internal features that you'd want, it gets pretty darn good fuel economy. It's a great long distance tour, it's got lots of luggage room, a couple can go and take all their stuff with them on a long trip. It's also a robust car on the track, it's a really fun track car, so it's got a lot of bandwidth. And one of our goals in the new car was not to lose that. We wanted to not sacrifice one thing to get more of another, it was to take everything up. So people ask me, what are you most proud of on this car? That's it, taking that very wide bandwidth and doing it all better. It is more performance, but it's also better fuel economy. All these things that are extremely challenging to do, I think we've accomplished with this car, and it looks great.
The new Corvette is powered by a 6.2-liter V8, and as Tadge went on to explain, what makes it so great is what happens with the torque on the bottom end.
One thing that Corvette gives uniquely, as part of the driving experience, is a massively torquey V8. And that makes the car feel instantly responsive. You don't have to wait for turbos to spool up. It's got enormous torque from down low. Makes the car feel really light and agile. And that's another thing that we've really improved on this car. The 6.2-liter engine has more torque from 1,000 to 4,000 RPM than our 7-liter engine Z06 of today. You can get that with variable valve timing, direct injection. And then, oh, by the way, since this car is so light and so aerodynamic, it only takes 12 horsepower to push it down the road at 50 miles an hour. So you take a 450 plus horsepower engine and you're only working it very lightly. So what we do is we shut off 4 cylinders for a lot of the time in daily driving, and that improves fuel economy a lot.
A base C7 that is as good, if not better, than an old generation Z06. Truly one of the best bargain sports cars on the market today. That says a lot. But why a pushrod V8?
It's basically small overall size, extremely power dense. Most people think of specific output as a measure of power density, but when you're designing a very small car. Sports cars tend to be small, compact. What matters to you is exterior dimensions of the engine and the mass of the engine. That's really what you want to do, especially if you want to do a mid-engine car. You're putting the engine mass behind the front wheels. You really want that mass to be as low as possible. And you want the engine to enable the body to be as efficient as possible. Since the small block V8 is very compact dimensions, we're able to put huge body structure sections around it, making the body structure very efficient. So you have one of the, if not the lightest, 450 horsepower engine in the world, and it's enabling the body structure to be very efficient. I talked about fuel economy. It has relatively few moving parts, and because it has so much low-end torque, we can gear it relatively tall so the engine spins relatively slowly. That's great for fuel economy, it's great for long-term durability, and you know, it's part of the Corvette formula for 60 years.
One of the most impressive things Chevy has told us about the new car is that the new engine has a rev matching system to improve shift times.
Rev matching is so cool. Many of us didn't realize how cool it was going to be until we started getting in the car. We thought it'd be a good idea. You know, you've got a large displacement V8 engine, a lot of torque, so necessarily a lot of the driveline components are extremely big, robust. You've got a 100,000 mile powertrain warranty, so a lot of the stuff's really over-designed. And so we thought, you know, this would be a really good idea to have the engine jump to be perfectly speed matched every time you change a gear. And some of the competition is doing that as well. And so we started looking at the best way to do it, and we realized the best way is not to look at the sensors in the transmission to see when you're in gear and then rev the engine. We said, you know what, it really starts with the shifter movement. And so we invented a new technology, it's patented. It's a three-dimensional Hall effect sensor, and it's right at the base of the shift lever, and it can sense really small movements of the shifter. And so it actually anticipates which gear you're going in. Since we have a 7-speed manual, you now have 9 places the shifter can be. 7 forward gears, 1 reverse, and neutral. So the shifter can be in a lot of places. So you really want to sense that immediately and get the engine doing what it needs to do to make the shifting really good. So we have it on both upshifts and downshifts, and what we discovered was it changes the way you drive a manual transmission. It's like playing a musical instrument because you can move the shifter around just a little bit with your wrist and watch the engine fly around to different RPM. And so you can actually sense check, do I want 3, 5, or 7, you know, in real quick succession with your foot on the clutch, and you watch the engine jump, you say, oh, I'll take 5. And you drop it in gear and just take your foot off the clutch and it's perfectly smooth, and you just drive away. And it's we've actually put the gear state up in the cluster so you can see exactly where you are at all times. You see the tach rev, and it's so much fun that we knew people would be wanting to turn it on and off to show their friends, see how good they could do on their own versus rev matching. So we're actually using the same mechanization as our automatic paddle shifters. So we actually have paddles on the steering wheel, which some people think, oh my gosh, why you got a manual car and you got paddles on the steering wheel? It's because it's so much fun to turn that thing on and off. We wanted to make it instantly accessible. And we're even finding, you know, driving like on a road course, there's some places where you want the car to do the work. You know, your workload's really high. You don't want to worry about that heel toe being perfect. So boom, you paddle it and man, it's perfect, butter smooth. Now you want to be on your own. You want to power shift up the next straightaway, boom, turn it off, and you're totally on your own. So it's just a riot, and it really, you know, a lot of people are walking away from traditional 3-pedal manual transmissions. We're really embracing it with this car because we think it's really part of the driving experience.
Despite what Tadge said, this isn't really all new technology. The concept has been around. Let's remember, the Nissan 370Z had something very similar when it was introduced 3 years ago. Now, I can't claim this is a great car or a bad car. No one can. No one has driven it. And that's where I'll leave this story. Until we get behind the wheel, I'll reserve my judgment. I only wish some of the buff books would do the same thing. But I am happy to hear that GM is starting to get it. The interior is vastly improved over past generations. The biggest flaw most people have had with the Corvette in the past years was the seat sucked. So simple. Why couldn't they change that? Well, they did. On a side note, from the auto show, Mercedes revealed a new E-Class lineup. The E63 AMG now has all-wheel drive. An AMG with all-wheel drive is very strange in my book. So I wanted to ask what the head of Quattro GmbH had to say about one of their biggest competitors following their suit.
Well, I'm happy that we now have first-time competitors with equal weapons, being not anymore rear-wheel drive against all-wheel drive. So now we have a competitor on all-wheel drive, and we can show what the performance benefits and the technology benefit of the Quattro drivetrain is. Well, all our cars are Quattro, means all-wheel drive cars, for good reason, and I'm happy that somebody joined us.
A new segment on Road Testament, Drive Trend. As many of you know, last week this is where we evaluate the SEO values of particular cars on the interwebs. You guys had plenty of comments last week. We're going to try the format out for another week or two before we make changes. But let's look at how our lists are doing. So down at the bottom, the affordable sports cars. The E30 and the BRZ are both up this week, while the MX-5 is slightly down. The FRS GT86 is up as well. In the mid-range, the M3 has gone up. Everything has actually gone up with the exception of Elise. On to the next slide. We have the top range, and of course the Corvette has dominated the interwebs because of the new C7 reveal, 100%, while the Ferrari and Porsche 911 are below 5, and GTR and McLaren MP412C not. Funny that the GTR has a 0 value, considering that that was one of the most popular trends on the internet 3 to 5 years ago. In the Uber section, which will promptly be renamed based off some comments from our commenters, the Bugatti Veyron is back up. The Koenigsegg and Huayra are both up. Koenigsegg is a little bit weird because I know a lot of you can't spell Koenigsegg. The i8 is, I believe it's not changed, right? It has not changed, and the McLaren F1 is up a little bit, right? A point up on the McLaren F1. I think we're going to get rid of the Veyron soon, right? Right, Max? Yeah. Say yes or no, your decision. Thumbs down? Okay, yeah. All right, okay. So that's it for Drive Trend and Road Testament. Where are we going from here? Oh, yes. On Facebook, Drive TV. I feel like Mike Spinelli not knowing what's going on with my own show. DriveShirts.com, and then we've got Twitter. No, fuck. All right. That's Road Testament. All right. Bye, guys.